to Horsefly Chronicles Radio with Julia and Philip Siracusa, sponsored by Carnation, airing live on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM in New Orleans. This show's entrance has been edited, produced, and directed by Gwen Clapper from Perfect Trust Productions, LLC. You can find us at perfecttrustproductions.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday night segment of Horsefly Chronicles Radio with myself, Julia Siracusa, and Philip Siracusa. We're broadcasting live from the International Public Radio and the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. This evening's show is fully sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. We love them. You'll have to do a few things in order to participate. Go over to our YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio or International Public Radio. You can also go into all of the Facebook stations, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Undercover with Joe Montana, News on the Flip Side, also Twitch, SoundCloud, and Podbean. Also go over to our group, Horsefly Chronicles Radio, and join if you haven't. And if you have any questions for our guests, please ask. Please welcome Nathaniel Gillis to the show. He is a religious demonologist and author. He spent 20 years researching what it was he encountered after living in a haunted house as a child. Nathaniel has sought to redefine the nature of haunting phenomena, ghosts, and high strangeness. You can find his book on Amazon.com, A Moment Called Man, The Skin That Crawls. So please let's welcome Nathaniel to the show.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me, guys. It's an honor to be with you.
Awesome. Wow, so you have quite an interesting thing over there going on.
What do you mean?
This is different.
Can you see it? There it goes.
There we go. Yeah. I was over here making faces. I was like, okay, wait.
I don't know what's going on. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Nathaniel, can you take us to the beginning of your story? What happened to you, and you know what drove you into the field of paranormal and made you want to become a demonologist?
Yeah, so my parents had moved into a house in Dayton, Ohio, and it was haunted. So my very first encounters with this phenomenon was full-bodied apparitions. There was like some kind of smoky phenomenon that would kind of weave its way throughout the room at nighttime. It was traumatic. Very traumatic. And so that was really where I got my first taste of the paranormal. And since then, because I think we left the house maybe when I was like 12 years old. So between the ages of 8 and 12, I lived in that house. But after that, I really wanted to pursue what I experienced. I wanted to get a better grasp, better understanding of what exactly I encountered. And really, I didn't want to be crazy, right? I wanted to know if there's other people out there that also experienced some of the phenomena that I did. But that was where I began researching, and not really researching, just even as an experiencer, trying to get a better understanding of this stuff. So that's really where I was brought up. That's how I got into this field.
How old were you when you had that?
I was 8 years old when we moved into the house.
And okay, it's interesting because a lot of the interviews we do, including myself, it starts at a young age.
Yeah.
And that's like, I can't tell you how many people we've interviewed that say the same exact thing. It starts at a young age, and it does. And I think it's when you're the lighthouse, right? At some point through adolescence, and the spirit world knows that you're able to somehow consciously see what's going on through the mind's eye or through the visual eye. Was that a visual that you see these things?
It was everything. I mean, it was even to the point where, like I always take people in my interviews, I take them all the way back to the first house.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, the first, what's it called? The open house, rather. Very first time, the actual open house, my dad took me by the hand and showed me what would become my room in the future and said, hey, take a look around. This is going to end up being yours once we buy the house and move in. Man, when I went into the room, it smelled like decomposition. It smelled like death, and so it was more than just seeing something or hearing something, because I had that happen too many times. But it was something that would even crawl up my nostrils. I could smell it. Very strange stuff. Very strange stuff. And I think that was also one of the key components that really inspired me to understand this more, right? Because it's not every day I hear people that say, "Listen, this entity smelled. It had a stench to it." You know what I mean? So that's really it was traumatizing. I mean, like,
Yeah.
okay, so the open house. Check this out, guys. In the open house, I was left alone in the room, and I was looking around, and for some reason, I was drawn. Some would say even compelled to get on all fours and look underneath the bed that was in the corner of the room. To this day, I'm 33 years old. I still cannot tell you why I felt led to do this. But when I pulled the bed flap up, a little blanket, there was a little girl that met me face to face. She looked to have been full body. She was definitely full bodied apparition, but she looked to have been about 6 years old. She was wearing a white linen dress. She had long black hair. And when we met each other eye to eye, we both kind of recoiled. And then she shimmied her body all the way to the back of the wall to where she was the furthest from me. And that was while encountering that entity in that same room. So I was seeing that full bodied apparition while smelling whatever stench was in that room at the same time. So, as a demonologist, obviously, when I started getting into more cases and research, I realized that sometimes you'll have an entity that will manifest as to you as something that you would want to have fun with, like play with, play video games with, or, something that'll seek your approval, something that you'll, give compassion to or something. But yeah, so that's really where I began. But
Are you
I can't.
saying, are you saying that that girl was a demon?
I think that there was a malevolent entity. I think that the entity that was in that house was either someone who committed suicide, or it was a spirit that caused someone to commit suicide. And the reason I believe that is because there was a period of time when I was in that house where I would go into, like, I'd fall asleep, I would go into nightmares. And they were the same nightmares night after night. And it was all in black and white. And it was consistent. I mean, it was like somebody just pressed play. And then the next night, rewound it, press play. And it always consisted of an individual, a young man, sitting on a picnic table next to another young guy. He stuck a gun in his mouth, pulled the trigger, and I would wake up, and I could feel that entity in the room. And I couldn't see it at that particular time, but I could feel it. It was almost as if it was right in front of me. I just couldn't visualize it. I couldn't see it. But that's one of the reasons why I believe that suicide, at least some form of it, either somebody who committed suicide or a spirit who made someone or caused someone to commit suicide, was in that house. Very strong.
I think it's interesting what you're saying. I'm blown away because the white dress, the girl at that age with the dark hair, well, that's in my book.
Okay. Wow.
At a young age. So that's how ironic is that? I mean,
Yeah.
and yet,
yeah, I know.
The reveal a couple of years ago it was a demon that we didn't know. So that's interesting. I mean, so it's like the Sally house. They try to show you innocence of a young child, right? And then you fall in. Look, you and I know spirits are way ahead of us, right?
Correct.
And I would say they're throwing out that rail, that fishing line, and they bring you in to their world in a sense where it's a state of confusion, belief. It's take us to the next point now. So we're at these points. Take us to the next big thing that happens to you spiritually.
Yeah. So while I was living in that house, I was attending a local church. And that church was deeply rooted in spiritual warfare. Like, they used to have guys that would come through, and some of them were raised in Africa. Some of them would go out and fast for like 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and they were what we would call in evangelicalism, we would call them deliverance ministries. And it wasn't like like deliverance ministries, like, and I hate to say it like this, but some people only have a certain reference when they think of deliverance ministry. It's not like Benny Hinn or these guys that go and throw stuff at people and they all fall out. These guys were people that I watched them. They would walk by people at the altar call, and demons would manifest. And so I would watch how they dealt with these entities. I would watch their rituals. What kind of prayer did they pray? What part of their body did they touch? Was what exactly happened? What were the mechanics of this form of spiritual warfare? And so what was happening, though, was very interesting. While I was going to that church, I was talking to people there about what I was experiencing at home, right? Just kind of, hey, if it was youth service or something, I'd say, I'd walk over to my youth pastor and say, hey, man, I'm kind of experiencing this in my house. What should I do? You know what I mean? Is there any, like, what would you recommend? And what I started realizing early on was that what I was experiencing, the shadow figures, the stench in my nostrils, the disembodied voices that I could hear speaking over my head at night, none of that fit into the blueprint of their demonology. So they were one-dimensional in thinking. And so what I had to do as an experiencer is I had to become a researcher as well. And so I had to expand beyond their horizons and really, really dive into this literature, go into biblical antiquity, go into Mesopotamia, and actually not just the literature of it, not just the academic version of it, but also understanding, okay, what's their pathology? Is there a behavioral pattern that these entities manifest, and have they manifested throughout history? And so that's what really led me into understanding the nuances of the incubi phenomenon, the succubi phenomenon, incubus and succubus, and the roles that they play and have played throughout history, not just in demonology, but in the UFO abduction phenomenon. And so it's broader. These entities are broader. They're far larger than the microcosm of even any demonology that I think that we have right now. So that's where my research and my experiences have led me right now is really looking at the bloody footprints in the snow and trying to just see a little bit through the veil, hopefully through the veil.
So you see this manifestation. That's a visual at that point?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. It's
okay.
Visual. Yeah, it was visual, it was audio. I could hear it. There were nights when I would wake up and I would hear a full-blown conversation going on above my head.
Wow.
But I couldn't, it was the weirdest thing. It's such a dichotomy. It's a paradox. It was both near and far from me. It was present with but absent from me. It was close enough for me to understand they were talking, but it was far enough away from me to understand what they were saying. So in that case, it just wanted me to know it's there. That's it.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I have experienced that. And I describe it like I'm hearing them through a tunnel.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Near and so far at the same time. It's mind-blowing because you can hear it, but it sounds like it's through a tunnel.
That's crazy.
And could that be the portal?
Very much so. And it's like I always describe it as being present with but absent from. And it's that thin membrane, that veil that separates us, where they're right beside us at the same time.
Wow.
But they're so right. So yeah, man. So that's really where I'm at in my research. Lately, my research has included what are called interconnectivities between the UFO abduction phenomenon. And so I've been trying to plug a bunch of holes in the research. Are we dealing with the same entities here that our ancestors wrestled with in antiquity? If so, is there a connection? Is there a linking behavior, right, that would connect the past to the present? And I would say this, absolutely there is. And I think that that once we get into some of these case studies and my research, it's scary. They're not playing by our rules. They're not playing by rules of demonology anymore. They've eclipsed that microcosm. And I think that as researchers, and I speak in my field of demonology. So whenever I say we, anybody that's a demonologist, anybody that researches the subject, we have to start thinking like they do. We have to start thinking and see what symbols they're using, what amulets they're using, what are they doing, So, but that's really where I'm at. And it's fascinating as it is troubling.
You said aliens. Do you think that aliens?
Yeah.
Well, look. I mean, the way I see it, demons don't build spaceships that are military and NASA sync, but yet there's similarities in paranormal investigation when these things come through and there's sightings in the sky. And that's where I get confused because a demon's not going to build a spacecraft. I mean, that's just plain stupid. Right. But there's such a similarity between these two. The fourth card in the movie, right? Fire in the Sky. They're talking about being abducted, okay, and having experiences that are so similar to a form of possession as well,
right?
Where they're having these implants put into them, and they have this attachment from this being, but the being does not exist because the being does exist. No one, if you don't see it, you don't believe it, right? It's a story that you're hearing, but yet so many people have come forward. The Greys, for example.
Yeah, you're right.
Fascinating. I cannot tell you how fascinating it is. I'm a researcher. I don't know as much as you, into all the stuff you're saying, but it's quite interesting. And I can tell you, this is what I do know is that having researched and having so many paranormal teams do investigations, there's a pattern with aliens and demons. And it's a mind blowing for us. I can't figure it out. They can't figure it out. But the recordings, it's like, what are we dealing with here? Are they just interdimensional beings?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
We're dealing with both hardware and software. So,
true.
Right? It's a very unique situation our species is in. I would say this. So my research, it started out not even believing. I had an open mind going into demonology. So my research was primarily centered around, okay, these are horns and hooves. And, I adopted the Catholic version of demonology. And then I started stretching my literature and my literacy into, studying the Dibuk or the Dybbuk and the Jewish folklore, the changelings and European folklore, all these different manifestations that make up our histories, respectively. It wasn't until I got a hold of some of the ancient literature and what a Mesopotamian text, the Akkadian text, Sumerian text said demons were, that's when things in ufology started making more sense. A heck of a lot more sense, And so there's two schools of thought within demonology. One is that we're dealing with fallen angels. And and so I grew up in scholarship. My dad's a Bible scholar. And so I grew up talking to Hebrew rabbis, Hebrew scholars, Aramaic scholars. So this literature and reading these texts was not foreign to me. It wasn't alien, right, to me. But so I knew some about what these people believed and what they taught. So the first school of thought was that demons are fallen angels. But that doesn't fit, because if you're an angel, how are you fallen?
True.
Right. So there's a paradox with a dichotomy in a sense. And so when you get into the way Yahweh in the Bible refers to fallen angels, the same phraseology is mentioned around men who died in battle. They fell. And so I started looking at these different terminologies, and then I started realizing that there's also another definition to these words. So if we get into biblical antiquity, it gets very interesting. Okay, I'm not going to get real academic here, but this is very important. The Hebrew literature took a Ugaritic word, two of them. First one was malakuma. Malakuma, before it meant angel, it meant deceased ancestor. Right? Then in Hebrew demonology, they came out with what's called Rephaim in the Bible. And Rephaim were these dead people, and Rephaim could mean giants or it could mean ghost. So what I started realizing is that there's a lot of evidence in the Bible from where we get all of these different legends about demonologies and all that. There's a lot of evidence that what we're dealing with are in fact ghosts, people who've lived and died, that they're existing out of their body. Now, I'll move even further. That's also why the Catholic exorcistic rite, their exorcism, it's found in Numbers 19 and 11. Look, I feel like I'm Italian out of Federal Hill in Rhode Island doing this. Let me tell you, Tony, come here. I didn't realize it. They got to adopt me now. It's done. Anyways, that ritual was not designed to cleanse someone from a fallen angel or some deity. It was designed to cleanse someone from corpse pollution. Wow. It's called the open vessel law in antiquity. That meant if you went into a house and you encountered a dead person or a ghost, and that ghost possessed you, then you'd go show yourself to the priest and they would give you holy water. So what Catholicism did is they based their rituals, their success, on the rate of the success of the ritual, but not on the reason for it. The reason for the success. The reason it's working is because they're dealing with ghosts, right? They're cleansing people of corpse pollution. Consciousness is possessing people, and then they go in and perform their exorcistic rite. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
So far. Okay. So if we get that understanding, then it rolls into this phenomenon. Okay, then do we have so if there are entities that are ghosts, then what kind of evidence do we have that in biblical antiquity? What about the Bible or what about history do we see that mirrors the modern UFO abduction phenomenon? Okay, So in antiquity, we have what are called necromancers, right? Necromancers.
Yeah.
What they would do is they would go out and they would take a corpse, someone who had recently died. Then they would take a small piece of metal, hello implant, right? They would carve the name of an unclean spirit. In Hebrew, it's tumarua. It's consciousness. Someone who lived and died. They would carve the name of that individual onto that piece of metal and plant it into a body. And the consciousness of that entity that was carved into the metal would then possess the body that it's in.
Huh. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
So we already have a history, just right now, we already have a history of these entities merging metal with consciousness and then placing that in a human body. Now, we know that we have evidence of that throughout all of ufology. But this goes to show you, again, there's a nuance here that it's almost as if it's a necromantic ritual to them, right? Because we have cases of abductions where people have implants in them, and the implant itself is alive. Well, it would make sense, wouldn't it? Because it has consciousness carved into the metal. That's why when they have it under a light, it moves. So then we have to think about, okay, are we dealing with a version of death where we don't understand death at all? What are they doing, right? Is this a version of necromancy? And are these entities that we're encountering necromancers?
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
That's
Wow.
definitely interesting.
Merging metal
and it's
with
got something
memory.
that has truth to it too, in a sense, right?
Yes.
Being the implant, and it's got truth to it, and it's still a mind blower because aliens are real. Period.
Right.
They're real. They do exist. And then all I got to do is go back to the pyramids. I mean, up until today, they're still saying our top people, scientists, it can't be done. It's too perfect. If you were a half an inch off at the bottom, it's never going to be at a tipping, a perfect tipping point at the top. It's just, it's fascinating. But inside those pyramids are pictures of look like little UFOs.
Correct.
With the gods. So I always go back to that because it's fascinating and it's true. And people that are having these experiences, they're not all nuts, it's real.
Yeah, I mean, how many people can be,
And especially possession.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
So you can put something, you say a name and a piece of metal, for example, consciousness goes into it's interesting.
Yes, sir. It's the possession plays a massive role in this. And whenever I do a lecture, I tell people that possession throughout history was not just the relocation of consciousness, right? It was the replication of life. So if we look at the footnotes of history, we see that possession began. This is, by the way, for people that are listening, this is James Fraser's work. He wrote a book called The Golden Bow. He's an anthropologist. He talks about possession in antiquity, and he says that possession first began on the battlefield when soldiers who knew they were dying, like if they had a mortal wound, if they were wounded, maybe it's an arrow in the heart or something in their liver, got shot or something with an arrow, they knew they were going to die. And so they would willfully, before they died, they would willfully dispossess their own body, place their soul in someone else or in something else to continue existing. It's very, very interesting. So at that point in history, we realized that these individuals, these entities knew that there's a way to keep surviving. If they had a body to possess, they lived in this dimension, there was something about their potential that was being fulfilled. And so then what they started doing is they started creating bodies to possess for themselves, right? And that happened in Genesis 6. But yeah, it's not just a relocation, it's the replication of life. Matter of fact, if you look at like I said, the footnotes of possession throughout history, these entities evolved. So whereas, we would have transient possession where these entities would go out and possess near Aunt Edna. The problem with that was you have a ghost who's possessing someone. So sometimes you'd have a male possessing a female. That didn't work, right? The apparition doesn't fit with the body. Then you would have a female possessing a male. Didn't work either. They have totally different experiences, totally different physiology. So what these entities started to do is they started to create bodies for themselves to possess, bodies that look like their apparitions.
Wow.
Yes. Can I keep going? Is this good?
No, keep going. Keep going. It's
okay.
very.
So what we saw that first in the book of Genesis chapter 6. And I know that while I'm a demonologist and I lean towards some of the evangelical interpretations, I do not consider myself an evangelical demonologist. What that means is my research is not limited to something I saw on TBN, and nothing wrong with that, but there's some deeper nuances here that are willing and available for us to learn. Number one, in the book of Genesis chapter 6, there's what's called a sexual pathology that these entities manifest. That's all throughout history. It's happening today. It's happening as we speak. It's happening tonight. It's happening everywhere. And this particular sexual pathology is when these entities will manifest to women in the images of a former lover.
Oh.
Okay. We called this the incubus, but demonology missed it, right? Oh, it's an incubus. That's demons. Oh, that's an alien. They're doing the same things. So in the book of Genesis chapter 6, we're introduced to a species of entity, I guess, that was manifesting to women in the images of a lover. Most of the time it was their husbands. And they would change shape and they would appear to women and they would groom these women. I use that loosely. They would condition, they would prime these women into a physical assault. I don't know how much I could say. Some shows I could get real down deep with it. Other times I could just kind of graze it. But you understand what I'm saying here, right?
Right.
An actual physical assault.
Yeah.
And it assaulted them. Now, you got to remember, these women are believing they're being intimate with their husband or somebody that they know, somebody that they've been intimate with in the past. That's what these entities conform themselves to. And then, this is interesting, at the moment of conception, these entities stared into the eyes of the woman and then reversed their apparitions to what they really looked like.
Wow.
Now, the reason they did that, and this is very interesting, it was what's called in antiquity, it was called an obstetric tradition. They believed that whatever the image of the man the woman was focused upon at the moment of conception, she will birth the material image of through her womb as a child. Remember how I told you they mutated? They got tired of just possessing random people that didn't look like them?
Yep.
What were they doing? They were looking, they had their apparitions, but they wanted a body that looked like their apparition. So they created a species through the womb of women that looked, they had the same appearance of the apparition that fathered them. You follow me?
Yep.
Okay. So demonology says that's when angels fell. I think that's it's a joke. Because if that's when angels fell, then that's limited to a certain period of time. And what's wrong with that is this.
Yeah.
Right. They're still doing it right now.
Yeah.
So are the angels still falling? Right? Right. So you don't understand what I'm saying. So again, it was not just the possession was not just about the relocation of consciousness, but they actually evolved. They mutated into replication of life, where they used us to procreate a species for them to continue their existence.
It's definitely fascinating. I mean, this is different.
Yeah.
This is out there.
I mean,
this is definitely. Let me ask you this: a basic question. What's your thoughts on death?
I think that death is like what? Okay, actually, no. I'm gonna tell you this. Okay, in the Atrahasis epic, it talks about how the soul of a man is made of the flesh of a god. Oh, so the soul itself, that portion of our potentiality that exists out of the body, there is a divinity to it. There's something about it that transcends this life. It transcends everything that we think we know about death and everything. Now, I will say this. I think that death is literally like the molting. It's like the caterpillar that molts, right? And molts into a butterfly. I think that's what happens. Now, the issue with this is that according to history, and this is even mentioned in your afterlife research, Ian Stevenson, even Alexander, there are some people that when they die, they don't evolve into the greater. They mutate, they devolve into something even worse than who they were in life.
Okay.
And we see that in possessions. Matter of fact, in the 16th century, in the debug phenomenon, this is why a lot of people, when they get into demonology, it gets even scarier than what people portray on television and on movies. See, when you go into the 16th century, we see another nuance of death in possession cases. Women, this is how it started. Women started being assaulted in the middle of their dreams. Hello, UFO abduction. And I'm going to show you guys another behavioral pattern where they mutated. And then they thought that it was just a dream, which raised their possibility of consent. So imagine this. And the reason I'm not picking on women or anything, I'm just saying this is how they evolved. This was their victimology throughout history. But these entities were manifesting to women in their dreams, coercing these women into a physical action, a relationship, whatever. And during that, the woman thinks it's just a dream. It's not real. Then they would wake up the next day and they would have fingerprints and bruises on their body. Then they started realizing that this is not a dream. What's happening to me is real, but the entity wants me to believe it's just a dream. Okay, let's move further.
Yeah,
because we're still on possession here, and the role death plays in this. So then what started happening is that these individuals were becoming possessed by the entity that assaulted them. Right? See, in humanity, in a little embodied, we can have people that will assault people, but they don't have the ability to possess them afterwards. Yeah. So whatever they're doing, it transcends this microcosm of flesh. Sooner or later, in the 16th century, these entities not only started possessing who they assaulted, you're going to see nuances of the UFO abduction phenomenon here. They started impregnating the women they assaulted. Let's take a step further. They were not just impregnating the women they assaulted with babies or anything like that. They were impregnating these women with their own consciousness, to the point that when these women were going to the rabbis, this is in Kabbalistic texts, these women they were pregnant, their bellies were swollen. The entity had curled up in the fetal position, to the point where your demonologists were asking the most profound question yet. Were these women pregnant with the entity, or were they possessed by him? Mm-hmm. So I think that as researchers, I'm going to tie this in a nice little bow, and then I'll shut up. I tend to ramble. I don't want to, because I do so much research, I don't know where to go. But I would suggest that we need to analyze that phenomenon and compare it to the modern missing fetus syndrome right now in the 21st century. It's all about death, all about consciousness.
Wow.
True. Do you think, one other question, and then Julia has a couple of questions for you. Do you believe that everything around us, including ourselves, is solid? Because we're all energy, but energy cannot be solid, but we make it solid through consciousness.
Right. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go back to, it's a great question. I'm going to go back to a demonologist in the Middle Ages. What they were witnessing was these entities, it's incredible. These entities were pulling the moisture out of the air, coagulating it. In other words, they were taking moisture, solidifying it out of the air, solidifying the moisture into an image, to where you could actually see them. When you touched them, it was water. But consciousness, right, has the ability to pull potentials out of nowhere and create itself and then step into the image. This is good. It's good, right? So that's why you have both the hardware and the software. Mm-hmm. Right? So you are hardware, you're software. You've got hardware, but there's software in it right now. And I think that it's a very good question, but I would lean more towards that. So I believe even as disembodied, these entities, and we have proof of that, like I said at the Atrahasis epic, right? The constitution of consciousness, the substance, the tangible nature of it that they experienced in history is real. And that points to your question, where it says that the soul of a man, that which exists, that which sheds the body at death, is made from the flesh of a god. So the paradox here is very interesting. It's not the flesh and then the soul, and then there's nothing soulish about the flesh. It's getting deep. I'll stop. But that your soul actually has a touch of, like, it's tangible. You can touch it. That's what they were talking about. Where it's not like our flesh. It's different. And that's why, like right now in my research, I believe that a lot of these aliens that are telling us they're aliens and all this stuff, when you get down to it, we have cases, guys, where they appear as grays. And then when they turn sideways, our experiencers realize that that's a complete mask. It's a front that they've put on. And it's kind of like a stage reality to deceive us. So what are they made of really? If we look at their characteristics, how they can materialize at will, walk through a wall, and then be available to be touched, they display the same physical nature and the same characteristics as an apparition.
True.
Right?
So then,
and I think,
I got to jump in there. So then, are we an apparition? Because
I don't know. It's a very good question.
Let's get down to it. We're not solid. We're all energy. So we're creating the image, everything around us, material and us and our own beings. And whether I'm in your reality or you're in my reality, because the truth is that if we go really into this, we don't even exist.
Mm-hmm.
So then if we don't, are we the apparitions as well? And are we creating the things that we're seeing around us?
It's a very good point. When
I talked to Plato. He's a priest, right?
Yes.
And we got into this conversation. He's a demonologist too, right?
Yes.
And we got into the conversation of, are you in my reality or am I in your reality? Because neither one of us exist. And that's a mind blower, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is a mind blower. Like if I really try to look at it, am I just talking to someone I'm imagining, or are you talking to somebody you're imagining? Go ahead, take the point.
Right. No, it's good. Good point. Good point. It goes back to this idea that, like in the occult literature, with different demonologies, it's very interesting when people can project their consciousness, step into different rooms. To the people that are witnessing that consciousness that's projected, it would look like an apparition. Very interesting, right? Walk through walls, do all this stuff. So the question is, okay, are we in our reality? Are we in theirs? I think that it's a lot of projection. I think that, again, it's just like these entities that will manifest to us according to our beliefs, our memories. Like, I'm not picturing, but I had a case in India, was an incubus case where the entity was like picking memories out of her mind and recreating situations that she had with her ex-boyfriends just to inseminate her, just to get her pregnant with what, yeah, I mean, it was so it's interesting because, and I don't really know the answer to that question, right? I don't know. Are they stepping into ours? Or are we stepping into theirs? I think that there is some kind of unified field of consciousness here where they're interacting with us in ways that could be helping us or it could be deceiving us. I lean heavily more towards deceit.
Fascinating.
That's the answer. Yeah, of course.
Fascinating. This topic could just go on forever because it's fascinating and there's realism to it. And we try to figure it out as investigators and the work that you do. You're very well educated in this. That's why we just like listening to you the way we are.
I've heard that all my life, man.
You know your stuff, and it's still mind blowing at the same time.
It's fascinating. You have any more questions? I didn't want to interrupt you.
That's okay. I want to know what were some of your really hard cases that kind of like really left a mark on you? If you could talk.
My cases were more they were experiential. So the reason they left a mark on me was not because I was traumatized. It was because that something in me connected to the people, connected to the environment that I was called to, that helped me grow as a person. Specifically, there was one night I was eating dinner, and I got a message on Facebook from a family that's local, and they were looking for my dad because my dad's a pastor. So they asked me, Pastor Gillis, can you come pray for my family? And I'm like, first of all, I thought, it said Mr. Gillis, not Pastor Gillis. So I didn't know if they were looking for me or my dad. My dad does the praying thing. I do like the more investigations and stuff. But so I said, yeah, sure, I can pray for you. They say, okay, this is our address. Can you come and pray for us? I had no idea the context I was walking into. The reason I went instead of my father's because they were having paranormal experiences, orbs, shadow figures, lights turning, really weird stuff. But I still had no context. What's crazy about it, this is why I say it was experiential, and it helped me grow as a researcher, as an experiencer, is because as I was messaging back and forth with this individual, I had proof. I left my body And the only way I can explain it was I was sitting down texting, but my soul and my spirit was walking upstairs on a second story house. And I was walking into a room in the back, and I went straight to a closet. And I said, right now, I said, I'm walking upstairs, and I said, I'm in a closet. I said, that entity is attached to something in this closet. The lady freaked out. She goes, oh my God, I was just in that closet last night, scared to death. I said, all right, whatever. I didn't say whatever and, push her aside or anything. I'm still trying to understand what's going on here, right? I'm like, what the heck? What am I feeling? What am I experiencing? When I get there, they give me the context. The daughter in the family had connected with a friend at school who was in their cult. And they had planned to murder the family, her family, of the house that I was going in and cleansing. And when I got in there, I noticed that they had cut up the carpet. And so when I got there, the husband himself was just out of surgery. He was stabbed. And what had happened, like one night, they said that the daughter of the house walked downstairs, opened the door it was about 3:30 in the morning, opened the door, and the 15-year-old came in without warning, obviously just started stabbing people. There was a murder. There's a murder. So when I got there, I didn't realize what I was walking into. I was met at the door by an atheist. The very first words out of his mouth, the very first person I met there, very first words out of his mouth was, Nate, no offense, but I don't believe in God. I don't believe in any of this. I don't believe in spirits. I think it's all a bunch of whatever, just jumbo, whatever. It's all baloney. I'm only here for him. That's my buddy. His dad was his best friend. That's my best friend, and I'm just here to support him. I said, all right, whatever, Thank you for that. You know what I mean? Like, all right, geez. But here's what I do in houses. I'm usually, I think I got this gift when I was in that haunting growing up. But I closed my eyes and I said, all right, I'm going to feel whatever I feel, and what I'm supposed to feel here, I'll feel. Started feeling a male entity that was a murdering entity. It was a man who was very violent to women, and I could feel him. He would come to my right side. The room would get really hot, very violent. He wanted to kill me. So the mother was killed. And the father, the husband, survived. And I told the husband, I said, man, is there anybody that he was disabled. I said, is there anybody that can walk through the house with me as I go through the rooms? I said, I don't need them to say anything, but I want them to hear what I'm speaking. I want them to record with their mind and their ears what I'm telling them, just so I have a witness. And I have this on a recording. It's very interesting. So we go through the house. I walk upstairs, and I could feel it get stronger. It's not in this room. It's not in that room. I go into the back room, and I could feel it so strong that I thought there was a person there. Like, I really thought there was a man in there that was just hiding from me or something. And so I went in there, like, guns out, literally, or not literally, but like figuratively, right? Like, thinking like this is going to be really bad. Like, I'm going to get attacked. It's going to scratch me. Who knows what it's going to do to me? But when we got in there, we walked to the closet, and I looked down, and there was a box of green model trains. And I told the lady that was with me, I said, hey, whatever this entity is, whoever it is, it's attached to this closet, and it's attached to those trains. I knew it either belonged to this entity in life, or it triggered a memory in this entity where it was just connected to it. So then we turned back around, and she goes, well, what about this closet? So we opened up that closet. There's a bunch of fishing poles and tackle boxes. So I go into the room where the couple slept. I go in there, and I could hear the faint whispering. I could hear just like that voice, right? It's there, but it's not there. You can barely hear it. And I could feel it. And I just thought, I cannot hear her. And this, by the way, this goes against everything I was taught. Growing up, this shouldn't happen. It does, right? I'm sorry, guys, it does. So I told her, I said, I've got to go downstairs. I said, because for some reason, I can't hear her here. It's almost like a frequency issue. So we go downstairs, I go into the kitchen, and instantly I see the victim sitting on a chair. Now, first of all, there was just a table in the kitchen. Other than their appliances, there was a wooden table, no chairs to the table, nothing on it. But in my second sight, I saw her smoking a cigarette, listening to music, sitting on a wooden chair. And so I noted that, and I even told the lady, I said, this is what I see, bam, bam, bam. So we go in the living room, and I told the husband that. This is what I saw and all this. And I said, so I don't know who this man is. I said, but whoever this entity is hates women. He probably beat his wife. He hates women. And he hates, he's what we would call a classic incubus, right? He challenges male authority. He challenges that male figure, to be a father, a husband, whatever. It's after that authority. And so I said, that's who he is. Out of nowhere, the husband looks at me and goes, that's very strange, Nathaniel. I got to get a drink of this real quick. I said, what do you mean? He said, remember, his wife's the victim. He said, my father-in-law was a part of a motorcycle gang. He said he was a heroin addict and he was an alcoholic. He said, and he would go into these these rages and these drunken stupors and stuff. And he said he would beat my wife unconscious. He said we took her to therapy for like 10 years because of PTSD. He said whenever he would get into these rages, he said the only thing that would help calm him down was to take him to a toy store. Hand to God, this gets weird. Take him to a toy store and get him grade model trains. He said, matter of fact, when he died, we took all of his stuff and put it upstairs. I get chills right now. Upstairs in a closet. At that time, the sister gasped. What? She says, you mean those are the green model trains upstairs? He goes, absolutely. He goes, matter of fact, it's funny you mentioned that table in the kitchen because my father-in-law made that table.
Wow.
And the chair, he said, in the chair that my wife used to sit on to smoke is in the garage. So at that point, I realized, again, a part of this cleansing is identification.
Yeah.
Knowing, right? So we did the cleansing, and at the end of it, it was powerful. It was like turning a light on slowly. The darkness left. 2 months later, I'm sitting in the same spot I was sitting in when I got the message to help this family. The lady sitting next to me with her husband. I'm reading a book. What are you reading? Okay, this is what I do. We get into this big discussion. She goes, I know who you are, but I can't tell you. I said, okay. About 45 minutes goes by. Her husband's like, listen, you've got to tell him. You're going to freak him out. You're going to think you're a stalker or something. You got to bring a resolution to this. Finally, she says, I am the social worker that worked with both girls. This is incredible. Incredible. She said, the night you did the cleansing, the younger daughter went to the social worker and said that demon came to my jail cell and told me I no longer have authority over you.
Oh man.
So that what I mean by experiential is it changed me too. Because I realized that these entities have memory and that they have their own belief systems.
That is
I'm
wild.
like blown away by this.
That is wild.
Yeah.
I keep thinking as he's talking, are we the shadows of the other side? And I think that because everything I've talked about and interviewed, it just seems like that are we the shadows?
It's just like you just end up with more questions. It's like
it's definitely and the knowledge that you have is amazing, and it's fascinating. I'm just listening to you, and I'm like, wow. Like, what's he going to say? I guess I could listen to you all night. Like, what's my storybook? I mean, this is amazing stuff here. And to the listener out there, these experiences that people have, I've had, they're true. They're real. Everything cannot be explained. It's not a perfect science.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of open ends, but it's true. And I like atheist people because I love atheist people. In fact, they challenge me to, I don't believe in ghosts and I don't believe in that. I just say, okay, you know what? I tell you
set
what,
yourself up.
I'm a New Yorker. I tell you what, you come to my house. And then when you leave my house, I want you to look at me in the eye and tell me that you still don't believe in ghosts.
We've had
and I've done it. I've challenged them and they walked out and said, you know what? I can't explain what I just witnessed. I can't explain.
It's real. Correct.
They walk out, I wouldn't say as like these huge believers, but they were questioning it.
Yeah, they were like, wow.
Like a light bulb that went off in their heads. You could see it.
And they experienced it. And like I say, I tell a lot of people, it's very easy sometimes to replicate manifestations in movies, right? Oh, we got all these different movies, and that's what it looked like. But you cannot replicate the energy you feel in the presence of these entities. You can't replicate that. Yeah. It's as alien can get in many ways. But this atheist is fascinating. A little bit later on, I get a phone call from the sister, the lady that had first contacted me. She said, "Okay," she said, "Danny wants to talk to you." And I said, "What about?" What about? Because last time I saw Danny, I forget his name, honestly. I'm just going to call him Danny, but he was curled up in a ball, rocking, crying, dude, crying. He was so shaken because during the cleansing, all I did, I prayed. I said, "Can you give us an angel to drag this entity wherever it belongs?" When I said that, the temperature shot up.
We have to, I hate to cut you off, but
it's all good. All right, it's okay.
It went by so
We
fast.
definitely need a part 2 with you because you're a fascinating guest. But really quick, before we all get thrown off the air,
we're getting
the signs.
Okay.
You do have a book.
That's gonna kill us,
right?
Yep.
Yes. Tell us where we can find your book.
Amazon. It's A Moment Called Man. You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook as Nathaniel Gillis.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Nathaniel, for coming on. We really appreciate it.
We'd love to have a part 2 because you have so much knowledge that I think it's important that you share it with the world, and in abundance of ways, because it's interesting, fascinating, and yet documented from the past.
Please join us next Monday night, same time, and we want to thank Carnation for fully sponsoring the show. We love them, and
that's it. Everyone have a great night. Follow our guest, get his book, the knowledge that he's putting out there. Get the book. One more time, what's the name of the book?
A Moment Called Man.
There you go.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Everyone stay safe.
Have a great night, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.